Is this embarrassing to talk about? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it until I guess I just share everything that's going on. Hey girl, hey. How you doing? You want to have a good marriage. Everybody gets married because they intend to have a good marriage. Nobody goes into a marriage thinking, oh, it's not going to work out. However, there are things that come into the marriage that you were never ever expecting before. Sometimes those things will challenge your relationship with your spouse. And one of those things that I'm going to be talking about today in this video is infertility. It can be embarrassing because it's not like I chose to be infertile, you know what I'm saying? But it does definitely have an effect on your marriage, in your marriage bed, and with your spouse, you know, especially if you guys are really trying to conceive. I want to share this topic because I feel like a lot of wives go through this and a lot of people are going through this, and nobody ever talks about it or what to expect or how to strengthen your marriage when this is happening. It is definitely a kick in the face from the enemy, and we can't let that happen. Where do I begin? I have 2 boys. When we wanted to have a 3rd child, we had our 2 boys. Everything was great. The pregnancies were awesome. The deliveries were all natural. We had very healthy pregnancies along this way in this childbearing process. So we decided this was the kind of the right opportunity for us in this year to try again to have another child. I didn't think nothing of it. I thought, I already did this before. I already had 2 kids. I know what I need to do. I know what we need to do, okay? And we're just gonna do it and it's gonna be done. Clearly, you know, things can affect you having children. You know, if you're stressed, if you're old, all these other things. And I'm getting older. I was in a very stressful season, you know, having just moved into our dream house, having renovating it, holidays, 2020, like it was a lot of stuff going on. And so as we were pushing for this 3rd child and coming to find out that we couldn't get it, it definitely started to have an effect in our relationship. First, when you start to have a kid, you're very gung-ho. You're like, oh snap, it's time to get it going. And you're lighting candles and you got the lingerie and you got everything going for you guys and you guys do it. But then after like the 4th or the 5th month of trying to do this thing and then you're being unsuccessful, it starts to wear you down. More so your mind and more so your desire to want to get intimate with your husband. Before, it was all about, let's make a love child. You know, let's get, let's do this. This is me and you, we're connected. We're about to do this beautiful blessing. But then when you don't do it, when it doesn't happen, when God doesn't just plop it in you, you start to all of a sudden lose focus of the intimacy that you have with your spouse. And now all of a sudden the focus has been shifted into, can I make this happen? Are we going to fail again? Is it me? Is it him? What's going on? I know for me, to get intimate, to get romantic, to get playful, all of a sudden was just like, let's just do this and let's see if this works this time. You know, you start to get these thoughts in your head and it does play an effect with that connection that you have with your husband. And so obviously your marriage bed is being tainted by fear and it's being tainted by doubt. And don't think for a second that those things aren't going to be just left there in that moment. It comes out into your relationship. It comes out into your friendship. It comes out into the future that you have with your marriage. And if you're not careful, it could change a lot of things. It could change the way you feel for your husband. It could change the way you feel about yourself with confidence and image and who you are as a woman and a wife. It could change your entire dynamic if you're not careful. If you allow it to continue to settle into you. If you allow that enemy to keep whispering in your ear, it can do a whole lot of damage if you're not careful. So in this season of infertility, you know, how do you stay connected with your spouse? How do you remain faithful and hopeful? How do you create the intimacy that should be there every single time, despite what's actually happening with this reproductive process? Some lessons that Kyle and I learned, and yes, some of these lessons we kind of had to learn the hard way because, again, we were completely blindsided. We didn't think that we would become infertile. So it was like, what the what, God? How is this all of a sudden not working anymore? This is what we ended up finding out really worked for us. And I am just praying that it's going to help work for you guys too if you're married and you're out there struggling with this issue. The first thing that we decided to do that ultimately, like, you must do is you must, like, this is not an option, ladies and gentlemen. This is a must thing, a requirement. You have to pray with your spouse. You have to pray over your marriage bed. You have to pray over your sex life. You have to pray over your hormones. You got to pray over your relationship, your connection, your intimacy. You have to pray that no matter what happens, whether you're going to have a child or not, you're going to continue to trust God, that God gave you this man to love, and that you're going to continue to grow in love with this man every single day of your life. The day that you got married should be the least amount of love that you have for your husband, because every day moving forward, you should be loving him more and more. You should be learning more about him every single day, and vice versa. So when you guys are going through this valley of a situation, don't for a second feel like prayer is not going to get you through it, because prayer is going to bring you closer. It's going to connect you guys intimately in a spiritual way. While you're trying to be intimate physically, the spiritual is going to take over, and it's going to produce an overflow that's going to come over into the rest of your relationship so that you can become intimate mentally, emotionally, and physically, which is what you're going to need when you're battling this struggle. Speaking of getting intimate in other ways, you should be able to take the intimacy out of the marriage bed and be able to find other ways to become intimate. Have those long conversations, get the massages, go on these extravagant dates, be young again with your husband. So when it's time to get down and try to do this thing again, you know, you guys are on the same page. Okay. The other thing you want to do is you want to talk about this. Listen to me right now. You have to talk to your spouse about how you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you're fearing. You have to talk about this. You have to talk about it. Don't assume that he knows. Don't assume that your heart is in alignment with his heart. You need to talk about this openly. Okay. If you're frustrated, if you're scared, if you're worried, don't be afraid to have the conversation with the man that's supposed to be closer to you than anybody else in this world. Have the talk. Have the talk. The other thing you want to do is put your marriage first. I know it's going to be really hard because you're so preoccupied with children and having children and my body and my future and what if we can't have kids and what if we got to adopt and what about this and what about that. But you have to remind yourself that you got to focus on your first ministry, because if you start to feel that separation, if you start to feel this tenseness, if you start to feel this awkwardness, if you start to have sex just to reproduce and not to connect with your husband, then sister girl, we got some issues, we got some problems, we got to iron this out. How do you iron this out by yourself? You might be asking. I'm glad you asked. I have a 90-minute conversation that you and I can have together. It's called the marriage makeover. And in this conversation, I could help coach you through what are the things that is causing the fogginess and the doubt in your marriage. How can we dump some of this stuff out of your system, and how can we reapply a fresh new outlook on what marriage should look like and what it should feel like to you and your spouse, okay? Don't be afraid to get coaching in this area. Don't be afraid to make an investment on your marriage, because it's probably going to be one of the saving graces for you, and it's probably going to be one of the stepping stones that's going to help you overcome whatever struggle that you guys are going through. So I encourage you, use the link in the description below and sign up to get a marriage makeover today. The last thing you want to do is you want to trust God. Just trust God. Just trust God, even if you don't have a child in this season, even if there is a complication, even if what you've been praying for seems very far out of reach and might never even come true. God did not bring you two together without purpose. God did not bring you guys two together without his glory being shared. You have to trust God. You have to trust that you are in the right season. You are with the right person. You are in the right place. And I know the desires. Trust me, I know. I've prayed. I prayed over these children. I prayed over the child that I long to have. I know what it's like to feel as though that prayer is just getting further and further out of reach. But you have to trust God. You have to trust that he has a plan. You have to trust that he brought you guys together for a plan and for a purpose. And it's going to be in his timing and in his glory and in his power that things will turn around. But you don't want to jeopardize what he's already brought to you, what he's already given you, and what he's already placed in your hand to care for and to be grateful for, and that is your marriage. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you tell me, give me a like, give me a thumbs up, share in the comments below, share with your friends and your family. How do you really end a video about infertility, other than the fact that you just got to keep hope alive and keep prayer alive, and do not for a second let the enemy drive a wedge between what God has brought together, because what God has brought together, let no man separate, let no enemy separate, let no weapon formed against you prosper. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.